Barcelona, Lamy Yamal, yes. 5-0.
I'm going Chelsea to score 2 and Barca to score 3 goals.
Enzo Maresca hasn't just revived Chelsea, he's rewritten what this club is supposed to look like after all the doubts. They called Chelsea's trophies participation awards, victories that looked good on paper but meant nothing in the real world of elite European football. They said the Conference League didn't matter. They said the Club World Cup was a glorified friendly. Last season, Enzo Maresca's young side lifted 2 trophies. The response? Laughter, doubt, dismissal. Wait until they face real competition, the pundits said. Wait until they step into the Champions League. And when Chelsea hosted Barcelona at Stamford Bridge, the narrative wrote itself. The Spanish Giants, the reigning La Liga champions, Lamine Yamal, the golden boy of European football, against a Chelsea side missing Cole Palmer, against a manager still learning his trade, against a team too young, too naive, too inconsistent. Every prediction pointed one way, Barcelona. But football has a funny way of humbling those who speak too soon. On a cold November night under the Stamford Bridge lights, Enzo Maresca's Chelsea didn't just win, they dominated. They didn't just compete, they embarrassed one of Europe's best. But the true story is bigger than one night. It's about a manager who trusted his ideas when nobody else did, a squad that grew up under pressure, and a club that went from rebuilding to believing, to scaring people again. This is the story of how a manager mocked for winning small trophies proved he was building something far bigger than anyone realized. This is the story of a team that turned criticism into fuel and youth into power. This is the day Enzo Maresca silenced the doubtful pundits. Last season should have been the moment people started taking Enzo Maresca seriously. Chelsea finished in the top 4, scored freely again, and finally looked like a team with structure instead of improvisation. Then they lifted 2 trophies, a 4-1 comeback win over Real Betis in the Conference League final, and a dominant 3-0 victory over PSG in the Club World Cup, becoming the first club to complete all 5 major UEFA titles. But the reaction was the same everywhere. It's only the Conference League. The Club World Cup isn't serious. Let's see it against real opposition. The number said otherwise. Chelsea ended that campaign among the Premier League's best for possession, progressive passes, and chance creation. Inverted fullbacks, double pivots, clear spacing between lines, the structure was there, and key players like Palmer, Enzo, and Caicedo grew inside it. What people ignored was the scale of the turnaround. 3 years earlier, Chelsea finished with 44 points, a negative goal difference, and 12th place, their worst Premier League season ever. No Europe, no identity, a dressing room split, and confidence gone. In less than a year, Pochettino steadied the club and Maresca turned it into a functioning elite side with 2 international trophies. Still, as this new season began, the doubts reset. Could this style survive a full title race? Could a squad with an average age around 23 handle pressure? Were Betis and PSG proof of something real, or just momentum from a young team? That's the shadow Maresca worked under. Trophies in hand, top 4 secured, clear patterns on the pitch, yet the narrative stayed stuck at nice football, but let's see when the level goes up. The truth is, the level was already up. Those trophies weren't shortcuts. They were stress tests. The rotations, the patterns, the bravery to trust teenagers, the control-based identity. It was all preparation for what Chelsea are doing now. Competing near the top of the league, winning heavyweight European fixtures, and making teams like Barcelona and Liverpool uncomfortable. People kept saying Maresca hadn't proven himself at the top level. This season is where that claim starts to collapse, because the trophies they laughed at were the first signs of the rise everyone is finally seeing now.
Yes, sitting second in the table after 11 games, the table doesn't lie. The points tell you they're second, your eyes might say, are they the second best team?
The strange thing about this season is that Chelsea were improving, but the noise didn't reflect it. A slow start created an easy narrative, and pundits ran with it. The 0-0 against Crystal Palace on opening day became same old Chelsea. The stoppage time equalizer at Brentford fed the idea that Maresca's system looked pretty but lacked bite. Bayern away didn't help either. Harry Kane punished every mistake in a 3-1 defeat that felt harsher than the performance actually was. Then came the setbacks that made neutral fans stop taking Chelsea seriously. Sanchez's red card at Old Trafford after 5 minutes. Chalobah's sending off against Brighton, turning a 1-0 lead into a 1-3 loss. Joao Pedro dismissed in Europe. Injuries stacking up. Colwill out long-term. Fofana not fit. Tosin unavailable. And at one point even Palmer and Delap were sidelined. On On paper, it looked messy. In reality, the performances weren't collapsing. The results were just being bent by chaos. Chelsea still ranked among the top sides for possession, shot volume, and progressive sequences in the early months. They were playing well between the boxes, but bleeding points through red cards, suspensions, and missing half a defensive line. That combination made it easy for studios to repeat the same dismissive lines. Too slow, too predictable, overcoached. The truth was simpler. They were undermined by availability, not tactics. And yet, something important happened in this stretch. Despite the noise, Maresca didn't change who he was. He didn't abandon possession for panic. He didn't drop his young players for older, safer options. He doubled down on structure, and little by little, the numbers started turning. That's the part most pundits missed. Chelsea weren't falling apart. They were stabilizing under pressure, learning to suffer, and preparing themselves for the run that would eventually flip the narrative. Somewhere between late September and early November, the numbers and the performances finally aligned, and Chelsea stopped looking like a project and started looking like a contender. The turning point wasn't one dramatic moment, it was the accumulation of games where the system held firm under pressure. The Liverpool win at Stamford Bridge was the clearest early signal. Chelsea matched one of the league's most intense pressing teams for energy and control, scoring late through Estevao and limiting Liverpool to fewer shots on target than expected. It wasn't luck, it was structure with conviction. From there, the team began stacking results. A 3-0 win over Nottingham Forest, a 5-1 dismantling of Ajax in the Champions League, and tight league performances where Chelsea averaged over 62% possession and consistently produced higher shot quality than their opponents. Even in the rare setbacks like the slip against Sunderland, the underlying metrics didn't wobble. Chelsea created more, conceded less, and repeatedly looked like the better coached side. By match week 11, they had scored 21 Premier League goals, the highest in the league at that point. 11 different players found the net, making Chelsea one of the hardest teams to predict defensively. No single star carried them. The system produced chances, and the squad converted them. Even without Palmer, even with defenders missing, the identity stayed intact. The inverted fullbacks kept the midfield stable. The front three rotated fluidly, pulling defenders into uncomfortable zones. The team's average age remained around 23-24, but the maturity of the performances didn't reflect that number. This stretch didn't silence the pundits yet, but it forced them to pay attention. Chelsea were no longer winning by surprise, they were winning by design. And as their league form sharpened and their European position strengthened, the story began shifting from nice football to genuine threat.
Ooh, it was like a modern Champions League classic, wasn't it, this game between Chelsea and Barcelona? Yes, we're still on, we're live.
When Barcelona stepped into Stamford Bridge, it felt like the first real measuring stick of the season. Not because Chelsea needed external validation, but because this was the kind of opponent people said they couldn't outthink, outrun, or outplay. And to make it harder, they entered the match without their most influential attacker, Cole Palmer, who remained out with a toe injury. For most teams, losing a creator who contributes heavily to expected assists and ball progression would force a reshuffle. For Maresca, it became a tactical opportunity. He started with no recognized striker. Pedro Neto operated as a false nine, drifting wide, dropping into pockets, and dragging center backs into awkward zones. This movement disrupted Barcelona's pressing shape and opened the half spaces for Garnacho and Estevao to attack. It wasn't improvisation, it was a deliberate response to Barca's narrow defensive line. Chelsea's early control showed in the numbers. They won the majority of second balls. Their first phase buildup consistently bypassed Barcelona's mid-press. Enzo Fernandez registered 2 disallowed goals from set plays, a sign of how threatening Chelsea were from rehearsed dead ball routines. The opening goal came from exactly that kind of preparation. A short corner pattern involving Estevao, Garnacho, and Cucurella created a chain of movements that ended with Nito's flick ricocheting off Jules Koundé for 1-0. It went down as an own goal, but tactically it was textbook Maresca, stretching the block, pulling markers out, and creating a chaos zone inside the 6-yard box.
We should probably start with Chelsea, right? Because they beat Barcelona.
Yeah.
And it's a big result for them. And, you know, all right, they had a man sent off Barcelona, but Chelsea were a far better side.
The match tilted further when Ronald Araujo received a second yellow. Barcelona went down to 10 men, but Chelsea didn't lose rhythm. Instead of forcing the game, they continued with measured tempo, rotating the ball, and waiting for the gap the system always produces. The second goal belonged to Esteva Willian, and it was a moment worthy of a Champions League night. He isolated Pau Cubarsí, attacked him at pace, held off Balde, and lifted a finish into the roof of the net. It wasn't just talent, it was the perfect example of how Chelsea's wide rotations create 1v1 situations for their most explosive players. The kid didn't waste it. Barcelona brought on Rashford at halftime to add direct threat, but Chelsea's rest defense held its line. Caicedo controlled transitions, Gusto stayed compact inside, and Cucurella's positioning prevented switches of play. The structure didn't bend. The final goal came from a move straight out of the training ground. Enzo breaking the offside trap, squaring across the box, and Liam Delap finishing with composure. The offside flag went up, but VAR overturned it. His first goal in 11 games, and the type of confidence moment a young striker needs. It sealed the match and silenced any idea of Barcelona mounting a late comeback. By the end of the night, Chelsea had registered one of their most dominant European performances under Maresca, controlled the tempo, won tactical battles in every zone of the pitch, and outplayed a Barcelona side built to compete at the very top. This wasn't a giant being upset. This was a team in rhythm executing its identity against a European heavyweight, and from the stadium atmosphere to the expected goals map, everything said the same thing. Chelsea didn't just beat Barcelona, they showed the football world the level they're operating at. Chelsea's rise this season isn't built on one big night, it's built on steady results that force the table to take them seriously. By early November, they were sitting near the top of the Premier League with the highest goal tally in the division. They averaged over 15 shots per game, ranked among the top sides for expected goals, and consistently controlled matches with possession above 60%. What made this run impressive was the adaptability. Even without Palmer, Chelsea didn't lose fluency. Neto, Garnacho, Joao Pedro, and Esteva rotated roles seamlessly, and the midfield pairing of Enzo and Caicedo provided the balance needed to dominate territory. The team's age profile remained young, but the performances showed growing maturity, fewer careless giveaways, smarter pressing, and cleaner second-half game management. Defensively, despite Colwell's absence and Fofana's delayed return from injury, Chelsea tightened their defensive structure. Since Fofana stepped back in, the backline has become almost unplayable, restricting teams to low-quality chances and going long stretches where opponents could barely create from open play. Wolves leaving Stamford Bridge without a single shot on target was a clear example of the control Chelsea now impose. Week by week, the data backed what fans could see. Chelsea weren't just competitive, they were becoming one of the most reliable performers in the league. The patterns held, the intensity stayed high, and the youthful unpredictability became less about mistakes and more about attacking variety. This league form didn't erase earlier doubts, but it changed the tone around the club. Chelsea were no longer trying to prove they belonged in the top 4 conversation. They were acting like a team capable of staying there. Chelsea's position in the top 5 of the Champions League phase didn't happen by accident. They pressed with confidence, moved the ball with speed, and produced the kind of sequences that usually belong to far more experienced squads. Despite having one of the youngest teams in the competition, Chelsea looked calm in possession and aggressive in transition. The most important detail was this: they were improving with every match. The spacing got cleaner, the defensive line held its shape better, the combinations in the final third became more automatic. Europe didn't expose them, it accelerated their growth. What made the Barcelona win powerful wasn't the scoreline, it was the silence that followed. For months, the loudest conversations around Chelsea were shaped by doubt. Even with 2 trophies in the cabinet, even with top 4 football restored, the narrative never changed. Nice patterns, but not proven. Good ideas, but not at elite level. Chelsea need years before they can compete with Europe's heavyweights. This match removed the disguise. It exposed how outdated those opinions had become. The performance didn't just beat Barcelona, it dismantled every assumption built around Enzo Maresca's reputation. Chelsea showed maturity in possession, discipline in transitions, clarity in their pressing triggers, and a level of structure that top European sides rely on. Expected goals, shot quality, first phase progression, and final third entries all tilted in Chelsea's favor. This was not a smash and grab, it was superiority, and it came without Palmer, with a false 9, with teenagers leading the charge, and with half the league still expecting Barcelona to walk in and take the night. Suddenly, the trophies from last season didn't feel small anymore. The Conference League became the first step of a rebuild. The Club World Cup became proof they could dominate elite teams. The league form, the goals, the patterns, the control, goal suddenly looked like the natural progression, not the surprise. For the first time since Maresca arrived, the reaction wasn't hesitant. Pundits who predicted a Barca win changed tone. Commentators who dismissed Chelsea's style started praising its maturity. Analysts who said the team lacked edge finally acknowledged the structure behind the numbers. And that's the irony. Maresca didn't silence the doubters with interviews or quotes. He did it with football. And that's why this night mattered. Not because Chelsea beat Barcelona, but because after everything they've built, everything they've survived, and everything people refuse to see, this was the night the story finally caught up with the reality. This was the night Enzo Maresca stopped being questioned. The night Chelsea stopped being underestimated. The night the pundits went quiet. The day the doubters were silenced.